All right, stand by as we start the show. Okay, I want to start again. Everybody, we're clear. We're not recording. I'm going to start over. I just didn't like something. Okay, here we go. All right. Roll Around the Barrel show. I am your host. One of them, Barrel Roller, Matt Bernard. I'm joined by my co-host, Swamp Box Rudy Frias. Say hi, Rudy.
Hi, Barrel Roller.
Yeah, Rudy's here right at the beginning of the show.
I know I'm so glad we're recording. I'm here at the beginning. This is exciting.
I know it's a big day for everybody. We talk on this podcast to vintage baseball players from coast to coast, border to border. I think you know that about us. And tonight we're going to do something a little different, but really cool, everybody. I know everybody's been anxious about this subject matter. I promised it a year ago. It didn't happen. And it's happening right now. Coming into the show, he's a member of the Franklin Farriers Vintage Baseball Club and the Tennessee Vintage Baseball Association. He's also a member of the Vintage Football Club, the Rock Island Independents. It is Simon Herrera. Simon, how you doing?
Good. How's it going, Barrel Roller and Rudy?
Doing excellent over here.
Nice.
Rudy,
nice.
how you?
I'm very excited about this interview, and it's for obvious reasons. So I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking.
Nice.
Okay. Simon, I tried to get you on the show about a year ago. We couldn't come up with a working day. You're a busy man. You're a father and a busy man. And I am not so much as busy, but I am busy. So we could never get it to work. And by the time before I knew it, the season was over and football was done, and it didn't seem like there was a point anymore. But here we are. We're in the middle of real football season, professional football in college, and this vintage football thing is great, and we're going to talk about that much later. But first, we're going to talk about the vintage baseball. Simon, tell us everything about your relationship and how it started with the Franklin Farriers.
Well, I just sort of saw on Facebook a vintage baseball team playing in Nashville, and I went down and checked out that first year as the Farriers and the Maroons. Checked out a game, and then talked to one of my buddies. We were both into baseball and played when we were younger, and they had I don't know if they called it a tryout, but something like that in the spring of the next year. So we went down there and signed up. And they were expanding from just the 2 teams to, I believe it was 10 teams at the time. So I joined up with the Highland Rim Distillers, which was a new team. And I believe that was 2013. So I've been playing every year since.
Now, we're not talking about football, but I am going to ask you just one simple question. What year did you start with the vintage football?
2015 was our first year. So played 2 years of vintage baseball, and people ask, and they're completely unrelated. So we can get into that more on the vintage football, how that even started. But yeah, unrelated.
Absolutely. I just wanted a timeline of your life and where we were, what came first. Now, you say you came across this on Facebook. That was all? That was it? You just happened to cross this on Facebook?
Yeah, I think they had posted, they're having games. They were playing at a couple venues. So that was it. I didn't even know it was a thing. I never even heard of vintage baseball before that, honestly. So I grew up in Iowa and moved around and was out in Arizona for a little bit and moved here in 2010 to the Nashville area. So was new to me.
Did you say that there was a tryout? Or
Well, I think they listed it something like that, but yeah, I actually I don't. It was, just some people showed up and signed up. Basically, I think they're just trying to get people out there, and trying to generate some interest. So
okay.
it
I was about to be
really
like,
a
wow,
tryout. Yeah,
that's serious down there. Fantastic.
yeah, that's what's cool about this league is it's a league. So I know a lot of the clubs, they've been around for a long time and they have different teams and rivals they purposely try and travel to play. But this one, set up partially by Trapper Haskins, who's still in the Farriers, but he came down from Michigan. I believe he played up there and kind of brought the idea. And I don't know. I guess he thought of a league because there was maybe not a whole bunch of teams they could travel and play regionally. So he's like, let's try it for 2 teams. And they had a lot of interest. So they just formed a league down here.
I love the setup of the Tennessee Association. I say it all the time on the show. You guys, you have your board of directors. Everybody seems to be on the same page. All of the teams. I don't think there's a club that exists in Tennessee that's not a member of this. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of one. A couple years ago, we had a Spring Hill team. We had, already the league was full, so they kind of had interest in joining the league. But so they played for like a year. They played a bunch of scrimmage games against some of us, and then worked out that maybe another team had dropped out or something, so they're in the league now. So, but that was the only one. Maybe far out east or west, but I'm not aware of them.
And you guys all play each other, and then it culminates at the end of the season with the Sulphur Cup, which we announced last night that we are going to be in attendance for in 2023.
Awesome.
It's at the Ripavilla Plantation. What can you tell us about the Ripavilla Plantation?
Well, that's the one in Spring Hill. That's where those guys started up a few years ago. So it's just a huge. The first year it was really cool. It was they used to use it for farming and stuff still with corn. So the first year they had a huge opening basically in the middle of a cornfield. So, but they had enough space for 2 fields. So when we did the Sulphur Cup there, it was just surrounded by corn, some parking on the edge of it, and you're playing inside the corn, just like Field of Dreams, kind of on just a grass field with some hills.
Yeah, so that sounds amazing. What else do you need? Maybe a tree or two.
Yeah, trees make vintage baseball a lot of fun. So
absolutely. So you follow up on this Facebook ad that you see. You do some sort of tryout situation. How long did it take before you fell in love?
Well, pretty much right away. I'm sure anyone listening can remember their first game. So the first game I played, well, I guess I don't remember all the details. I just remember afterwards thinking, wow, like this is amazing. You're playing out there in front of people, playing baseball again. It's competitive. And, it was a game that meant something. You hadn't done that in a long time, when you're in your low 40s. So other than, softball or something. So this was, a chance to play baseball again. And yeah, so pretty much right off the bat, fell in love. And like I said, I was in the Highland Rim Distillers I did that for 3 years. And the third year we won the league championship, but not the Sulphur Cup. So, but yeah, that first time we kind of had a meetup scheduled because everyone was going to build backstops and, different stuff for their team. So I remember meeting some of my first teammates, and some of them were like, yeah, we're going to be pretty good. We probably got, everyone's talking about how their team's going to be one of the better ones and everything. And you get out there and see these guys running around that haven't played baseball in a lot of years. So, and now they got to play it with no gloves. None of these guys had ever played before, I mean, as far as vintage baseball, it's been 20, 30 years since they played with a glove. So yeah.
So when
How long did it?
Oh,
go ahead, Rudy. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, I was about to say when you get out there and you show up and you're stepping onto the field, are you telling them where you're going to play, like your positioning, or you're like, what do you guys need? And then they place you.
Well, yeah, I didn't know anyone on the team, so and definitely not the captain. So, I felt like I was pretty good. I'd said I played a lot of outfield growing up, center field. So I kind of said that's what I wanted to do. And after they saw me out there a little bit, they're like, yeah, go ahead. They're like, you got outfield A lot of the guys were a little bit older than me. I was in my lower 40s. I guess it was kind of a mix, but there's definitely some guys that were less suited for the outfield. So worked out well.
How long did it take you to relearn how to catch a baseball playing center field? Because it's a different process. How long did it take you to get comfortable?
For me, not super long. I played a lot of football and catch with football. I played a lot of flag football in my 20s. And I even played up in Chicago. They have 16-inch softball, which you play without a glove, actually. And it's a bigger softball. So I was used to catching, kind of like you catch a football, that thing, like make a little net or web. So on the run, especially on the bound, you can go out there and kind of catch it like this. Line drives or pop flies. I guess that kind of evolved, but I was one who pretty much always wanted to catch it on the fly to avoid any sort of crazy bounce. So, and the crowd also liked it better when you catch it on the fly, on the run, so I was out there maybe showboating a little bit, trying to catch everything in the air that I could, but kind of evolved to let it hit my hand and sort of let it bounce a little bit. And then if you miss, you got the other hand free to get it off the bound or off the miss. So I was pretty good at the first couple of years right off the bat. I really don't remember dropping, making any big mistakes as far as catching in the air.
And that's you started out in the outfield, and that's where you felt like you were pretty good. How long have you gotten closer to home plate since then as you've gotten older, or are you still out there in the outfield?
I'd like to be, and I kind of mix in a little bit. The long story is I kind of injured my knee actually in a vintage baseball game, sort of smashed it into the ground, and kind of lose some meniscus and that sort of thing. So for about 2 years, I had a stem cell treatment done to it, which didn't help a ton, but I kind of started playing infield. I played first base for most of a year, and then the last 2 years we've been a little shaky at shortstop area, so I'd done that some, and we were really shaking the outfield, so I'd mixed in out there a little bit. So I was kind of just trying to save the steps, from running out in the outfield. And but I'm definitely not as good at shortstop or first base as I was in center field, but it's helped me keep playing, by less running, I guess.
You're a guy after my own heart. Like I started out left field, then moved to center, then moved to right, and now I just want to pitch. So I want to save my legs. Plus, sometimes you got to step out there, especially when you don't have enough outfilders. So I completely understand.
Yeah, I've thought about pitching. I'll do the batting practice just to save our pitcher some of that work. I can throw strikes all day, but I know there's some skill to it a little bit. So I feel like if I go in there, because I pitched a little bit in softball just to fill in, but I just serve them up literally. So I'm probably not the best for that, but I feel like I could get better at that if I, keep playing into my 50s and longer. So.
Yeah, Rudy, how did you feel about him saying there probably isn't much skill in that pitching?
There's not no offense taken. He's 100% right. Like,
I don't. Did I say that? I didn't mean there's no skill in it. I just meant I don't have any skill. I just serve it up every time because I can't pinpoint it. I just natural for me to just try it and throw it right down the middle, and that's probably not what you want to do.
That's not what you want to do. Some people would tell you that's what you want to do. They're the ones that want to hit the ball. Rudy, do you throw it down the middle?
I do not throw it down the middle.
Okay. Everybody in the Tennessee Association plays in the Sulphur Dell Cup. So all you're doing during the season is you're seeding yourself, basically. And so give us a quick review of how the Farriers did in the Sulphur Dell Cup this year.
Well, unfortunately, I believe we finished the season as the last seed. So, we had a rough year, a lot of new faces 2 years ago, and then this year. So it was rough season. I believe we scored like 31 runs and gave up like 130 or 40. So
generous.
And then also I didn't help because actually my vintage football game was scheduled the same day as the same weekend, so I have to travel for that. So I missed, and they lost. So I believe they may have actually won the first game. I asked Meatball Tim Morgan about that. I think they won the first, but he was being sarcastic. He's like, no, we didn't win. So yeah, not good this year.
So you're a guy who picks his vintage football over his vintage baseball. Say it here. Say it loud. Say it proud.
Kind of have to when you're heading up the whole thing, but yeah.
Well, yeah, that would be a bad look. I'm going to stick around for this baseball tournament.
Yeah,
By the
when
way,
when we have pretty much zero chance of winning, I'm gonna
our run
bail on
differential was 100 on the year, but I'm going to stick around, see how it goes. Good luck, you guys.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys in Tennessee, you are really blessed with a bunch of beautiful home fields, from what I understand. What are some of your favorite fields to play on down there?
Well, I love our home field, the Carton Plantation. It's also big enough for two fields. There's the house off in the distance and a cemetery, Civil War cemetery out basically in the outfield. It's probably like 500 feet, so nobody's come close, but little iron fence around it. So, and then behind it is usually they're growing like hay out there. So there's a little drive and then hay field behind, where you're at, and you got some open grass there. So, and then some big trees way off in the distance, but it's a battlefield. So that's one of my favorites. Also, I'll jump to my least favorite is downtown Bicentennial Mall where the Maroons play. If you're left-handed, the wall is literally like 180 feet or something crazy. So you could do a check swing and hit it out on the street, which they don't like. So I'm like, why why we have lefties bat here? This is so I always do horrible there because I kind of swing for some power and I got to do half swings. I don't like it. Everyone knows I don't like it there. So a little bit of a disadvantage.
What's the rule when you hit it out onto the street? Right field?
Foul ball.
No.
So, yeah, but I mean, I don't think it counts against you for a strike necessarily.
No,
but, no, yeah,
it's just annoying.
It's out of play. Yeah,
yeah.
So yeah, just a quick story. I think we were getting killed this year by the Maroons down there, and the score was probably like 15-2 or something. And as my last at bat, I knew I just swung as hard as I could and hit it across the street into the building, and just out of frustration, I'm like, all right, this is we'll see how far I can hit it. Which they get mad because there's cars out there too. Luckily, I didn't hit anybody or any cars, but
oh wow,
yeah. So
wow.
But there's trees out that way too, so you can get lucky and catch a tree. If so, the other way though, it's a little far. It's probably like 250 or something, but still you can hit it out that way too. So it's just a real small field.
Vintage baseball does seem to be biased against left-handed hitters because here in Michigan, we have a handful of fields that really treat left-handed hitters like crap. And I've never seen a field that treats right-handed hitters badly. I just haven't seen one. Is there one? I can't think of one.
No, yeah. There's one field when it was a Highland Rim Distillers. Dang it, the name of the park is slipping me right now, but the left field was lined with oak trees, so you could just swing away and hit it in the oak trees, and you got a huge advantage there because it's going to bounce all over or go through the trees. And out in right field there was one oak tree, so since I'm a lefty, I would just, and it was right down the foul line, but I would purposely just hit it at that tree. It's the only tree I could hit at. I couldn't hit it at the the row of trees like all the righties could. So definitely a disadvantage there as well.
Your wife is a chiropractor from Michigan. How did you find her?
So I was working in Chicago for a while at Motorola back in the late 90s and in high-end electronic stuff, and that all went overseas. So I moved back to where I'm from, which is the Quad Cities, which is Rock Island, Bettendorf, Davenport, Moline area, and Palmer School of Chiropractic is located there in Davenport. So she was attending, and I just moved back, so we met kind of through a friend there, and that was back in the early 2000s. And she took a job out in Phoenix. We went out there for a little bit and then on to Tennessee.
Was it a blind date?
No, it was actually her birthday. So just a bunch of random people go out and met her at her birthday party. So it's kind of cool.
Where did you take her on your first date?
The answer is bad. It was like a Chili's.
Yes.
So yeah, but
Classy.
it wasn't
not-
exactly. I don't know if it was a date. We were going to go out and see music, and we're like, "Well, do you want to eat first? All right, let's go here." So yeah, that's
Hey, I mean, it's good to to know somebody over some jalapeno poppers.
yeah.
Like,
So
That's not terrible. Is that all you did though? You just went to dinner and that was it?
no, we went out to see. We both like live music, so went to see kind of a like at a little downtown bar in Rock Island. Some a little local band playing, so went and hung out there.
the,
See, that's
um,
you probably couldn't talk much during that because live music is
yeah.
Yeah. So we got to talk over, the poppers.
Rudy. What were
Does
you gonna ask?
does being married to a chiropractor come with the perks of constantly being adjusted? Are you always perfectly aligned?
She'll check me sometimes, but no, because when she gets home from work, that's the last thing she wants to do is check me out. And when she's done with her work, she does her paperwork and then she leaves. So I'll usually complain. I'll know when something's out from one of my vintage sports, and
Yeah.
I'll go in and see her. And usually I'm right. She does the atlas, which is the very top vertebrae, and if that's out, you can have kind of like headaches and stuff like that. So I'll be
Yeah.
able to tell, and she can check and she's like, yeah, you're out. So it does come with those perks, yes, but it's not like you'd like it to be, probably.
Oh,
Wake
What
up
is
every
your-
morning and
yeah. Ooh, I feel good.
What does your wife think about the vintage baseball?
the baseball, she enjoys it, but it's so hot during the summers, and like I said, we got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. So there was some, the first couple of years we didn't have any kids. So as we got kids, though, the thought was that I was going to retire, and I was in my mid-40s at that point, but I kind of pushed through those tougher years and was able to bring my at the time my 2-year-old boy out to the fields in 90-degree heat and humidity, and she might stay home and or have to come out there. But yeah, it's a little bit rough, but I mean, she loves it. It's fun to come out there, and now the kids are a little bit older, so they run around and play with other kids. But she might make it to about half the games, I'd say. But it's mostly because the heat. It's very hot in July and August here.
You got to take that into consideration, because I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and
Yeah.
we're like, do you want to come to the game? No, it's going to be like 98 degrees and 100% humidity. We'll stay home. I'm like, I understand. So, yeah.
I'll usually drag my son out. He's the older one, so he has to sit out there under some shade. But just because if I leave both of them at home, it's gonna wear on her even more. So we got to get one of them out there.
Exactly. Divide and conquer.
Yep.
So you guys are dealing with a little warmer weather down there. What are your uniforms like?
I mean, we wear they're black Levi's, sort of like stretchy jeans, but that and a long sleeve button shirt that's got some brown and white stripes on it. But it's kind of a thinner shirt, and we're allowed to roll up the sleeves. So, but it's not too bad, really. And that first team I was on, the Highland Rim Distillers, we actually wore like a distilling bib. So we wore this bib that went all the way down the front to your almost your knees. And we're out there playing baseball in that. So it was kind of like overalls. It's kind of like it was overalls, I guess, that went up and strapped over, but you had this little bib in the front with a shirt underneath. So probably looked kind of cool, but it was a little different to play baseball in that.
Have you suffered any actual injuries playing? No, just the baseball.
Just like I mentioned, the knee, which was I've besides the knee, not really. I've been pretty lucky. I've taken some line drives at first base off of the like the wrist area on a bounce, and that sort of popped out about a half inch, swelling and stuff like that. I've been really lucky because a lot of our fields have little mole hills and all sorts of divots and stuff. There's been a couple people who broke ankles and stuff like that. So haven't stepped in a hole all those years running around the outfield. But the knee was really it, and like I said, that kind of slowed me down for a couple years there. But I've been pretty lucky. One of my good friends kind of retired. He took a line drive and broke a finger. So yeah, so been pretty lucky, I'd say.
Simon, you live in Nashville. Let me ask you the same question I ask everybody who lives in Nashville. Why does God hate Nashville so much?
Oh, why do they say that, or why do you say that? I haven't
Natural
really heard that.
disasters.
It has been hit by so many natural disasters.
Oh, okay.
It seems like God hates Nashville.
Yeah, it's funny. I work at the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency. So, yeah, we had a Christmas morning thing a couple years ago where the guy, blew up a truck downtown, and some tornadoes, wildfires, and stuff like that.
Huge
But
flood.
well, the flood, yeah, 2010. I wasn't here yet. I just moved here right after that. But yeah, that was a mess. So, yeah, I don't know.
Wow.
It does seem like there's a are you a Titans fan by chance?
No, that's I'm a Jets fan, and the reason why, because everyone wants to know, is I grew up in the middle of Iowa. There's no teams. I was on the east side of Iowa. There's no teams there. So when I was a kid, I loved airplanes, and the story goes, I asked my dad, "Is there a team called the Airplanes?" And he said, "No, but there's the New York Jets." So a lot of years of suffering, but
I was about to say,
that
it
was his
thus
answer.
began the years of trauma.
He could have told me there was the New England Patriots or something, or
Yeah,
no.
that would have worked out for you. I'm a
Yeah.
Dolphins fan. So I
Okay.
feel
Yeah.
you to
Some
an extent.
great games. I started watching in the early 80s. So Jets going to the AFC Championship game and playing the Dolphins in 82. Heartbreaker. Dolphins flooded the field. And, the rest is history. We don't forget.
What about the great comeback against the Dolphins on Monday Night Football?
Yeah.
That was I can't remember the year off the top of my head. That
Early
was a Jumbo Elliott
2000s.
catch in the end
Yeah.
zone, though, right?
Yeah.
Or-
I believe Wayne Corbett had a good diving catch on that one too. So
Wayne Corbett. There's
Wayne
a name from the
Corbett.
past.
That's a name I haven't heard in a minute. So yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's been a while. What are the Jets' chances this year as they have no quarterback?
well, they definitely have no quarterback before a couple weeks ago, but I really like Mike White. So Mike F and White, as they call him.
Didn't he just
So,
get hurt?
yeah, well, he might have broke a couple ribs yesterday. I didn't really see what happened. I know he got crushed, bent over sideways, but he came back in the game. But I haven't seen today what the
He's
deal is.
tough. He went to the
Yeah.
hospital after the game immediately and was there for a while. But he just looks good compared to the quarterbacks that you have.
True.
I
I
don't
mean,
think playoff game winning capable.
yeah, he has
What
his
am I?
ups and downs. He either throws for 380 yards or 180. So, but it's better than Zach Wilson throwing for 80. So. So
true,
yeah, we
Zach
got
Wilson.
hope. So I think the Chargers took us out of the last playoff spot, but it's still possible to get to the playoffs. It would be a huge step for them.
When I look at the Jets right now, I see what I've dealt with on the Dolphins quite a few times over the last decade. You have a really good defense. You have a team that's ready to compete, but the fact that you have no quarterback is going to destroy you. And by the time you get something figured out at the position, which we never did, but your window is going to close on that defense, and then it's going to be too late because everybody beats themselves up in the football so much that these windows of having an awesome defense only last 2 or 3 years. So, sorry.
Yeah. That's why when the Jets
Feel like-
drafted him and he didn't work out last year, I was like, just keep drafting a quarterback in the first round every year until you get it right.
Yeah, because they were way off on that, but everybody knew it. That was a
Yeah.
terrible pick.
Yep.
It's time. It's
I was about to
time
say,
switch.
this has
It's
been a great
time.
segue. Yeah.
Yeah, this is I hope everybody got their vintage baseball talk. Blah blah blah. We catch it with no gloves. Okay, here we go. Moving on to the sirloin, the filet mignon of the episode, as it is. Simon has started. We're going to ask him all these questions. He's going to correct me in everything I'm about to say because I don't know details. But he's part of the situation that started the Quad Cities vintage football situation that exists. And people have been asking me, there's such a thing as vintage football. Well, yes, there's just not a lot of teams and I don't even know where it is other than in his area. So we're going to find out everything, and we're going to start right from the very beginning. In 2013, Simon starts up playing vintage baseball, and then he gets a spur in his ass about vintage football in 2015, and this is how it started. Go.
Well, it actually starts before 2013. So that's what I was saying. They're a little bit unrelated, but in about 2006 or 7, right before I moved away from the Quad Cities, which is where Rock Island is, I had started researching. Everyone knows that there was a team that was in the NFL back in the beginning 1920, the first year of the NFL. But you know that kind of growing up, but I never put much thought into it. And then suddenly that year it clicked. I was like, wow, like nobody talks about this team really. Like, what's the deal? Why were they in the NFL, and why were they, why are they not anymore? So a lot of trips to the Rock Island Library, and I built a huge website for the team, rockislandindependence.com. It's very outdated. It's still running somehow. I haven't touched it in years. There's a lot of incomplete stuff on there, but I wanted to put the main story there. I put all the box scores of their games and stuff like that. So I just fell in love with this team and researching. I've always loved history and everything. And so that happened. And then, like I said, moved to Tennessee, and in late 2014, a guy named Chris Zimmerman, a local in Moline, Illinois, sees my website, and a lot of people had seen my website. I had a lot of former, a lot of families say, hey, that's my grandfather played on that team, and I exchange emails, and they're sending me stuff. And actually in 2014, the Rock Island Library had a traveling football exhibit, and some people came out and met some people there, and they had said, hey, can't you get like an old helmet or something, and maybe we'll drive by Douglas Park, and you can have a couple guys out there throwing the ball around. I was like, yeah, I don't have any equipment. I just researched the team. It's going to be, I said that would be cool, but it just didn't work out. And so we had that, and the guy, Chris Zimmerman, emails me and says, hey, when is your Rock Island team going to come play my Moline team? And he said, we'll meet down at the park. You know which park I'm talking about, which was Douglas Park, which is where the Rock Island Independence played. So that was his email. So that started it. And I kind of wrote back and forth. A couple of people had talked about something like, maybe just some small talk. Hey, we should play a game. We should do something. But this guy was very serious. He knew a lot of people, and he's like, we get some guys together. I got a lot of friends and contacts. We can get out there and play a game, and that's basically how it started, becoming a reality.
And so you guys are following, so we're going to treat it just like vintage baseball.
Yeah.
You guys are following the exact rules of 1920?
For the most part. So I got lucky, came across a Spalding 1917 rule book, which it was actually, I think back then they sort of modified it each year rather than putting out a new one. So it was like the modified rules for 1920, which is the year I wanted to focus on the late teens, or to 1920 or so for certain reasons. But so I had a rule book and went through that and everything. So that's where the rules came from. Now let me go back real quick to Chris and I starting off, if that's all right. So he said, let's get some people together and we'll do this. And I had this grand idea because I already played a little vintage baseball. I've seen how, people wear uniforms and this and that. And I was like, well, let's get some uniforms made. And he's like, well, I was just thinking some old t-shirts. We'll go out there, have some fun. And so we went back and forth a little bit. And there was one phone conversation where he basically was getting kind of irritated because I was like, well, we got to do this, we got to do that. And I said, well, and before that, we had gone down to Rock Island Parks and Rec together. We pitched this idea. Hey, Rock Island Independence used to play here. We're thinking about doing a game down here. And that neighborhood is not the greatest neighborhood, still not, but it's improved since then, I'd say. But he said, you want to hold a public game down there at the park? They were like, I don't know if that's the greatest idea. But we said, yeah, that's where the field is. We want to play there. And the field was in pretty bad shape too. It was just they use it for some softball and stuff like that. The grass was all, not great and everything. So we got that straight. We had to rent out the park and everything for the day. And so he helped come up with that. So he found the jerseys here. I got this here. Got these made up in Canada by a manufacturer up there. So we got that going. But he basically, and this was beforehand, he said, "Hey, look, we're just trying to play a vintage game and have some fun. We're not trying to make this TV ready, for the NFL Network or something." So we went back and forth, and I guess the long story is we do have a cable channel come out and shoot the game every year. So I won there, sticking to my guns, and we're gonna make this thing look a little more legit than just some old guys out there running around.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a wise man once said, it's only as special as you make it. And
Yeah.
you identified that right away. And for our listeners out there, you can see this amazing jersey by just clicking the YouTube link that will be on the Facebook page, and it looks sharp. And so that's
Yeah.
and so you had the jerseys, and do you have helmets?
Yeah. Would you like to see what we use here? It's
Absolutely, yeah.
Pastime Sports makes these. They're leather helmets, like a dog ear helmet here. So it's right around, like I said, 1919 to 19, early 20s helmet. And when I told the guy I wanted to purchase some of these for that, he said, "Oh no, these aren't meant to play in." Give me all this crap about it. And I said, "Well, it's going to be flag football, because I don't know if you guys had said that yet, but it is flag football, but I'll get into the rules and all that." But it's like, so I ended up buying a few, and longer story is we have 24 helmets now. So you can wear one if you want, or you don't have to, which if you look at the pictures back then, a lot of them didn't wear helmets back then. So it still kind of looks authentic. So
Yeah, you can absolutely play flag football, because there's no way you'd have a full team by the end of the game. Tackle is a violent thing, and if you have the skill set that's comparable to vintage baseball, you probably got some guys that are just out there having some fun, and you don't need all of the gurneys coming out and taking people off the field. That's a bad look.
yeah. So it would have been a one-time event, and they'd ask us never to do it again. So it might have been worth it, but yeah, we'd have nobody back year two. So
The flags are one rule that you have had to compromise on for obvious reasons. You're keeping people healthy, you're putting on a show. And can you go through the rules? Talk to us, because we don't know anything about the 1920s football. We're just your common average football fan. What is so different about the 1920s as opposed to what it's evolved into right now?
Well, part of the reason I picked like 1920 is because there's not really a ton of rules. Before that, you couldn't do forward passing, and they had all these like big mass wedge plays and that sort of thing. So in the early 1900s, they kind of tried to clean it up a little bit, less momentum plays, and that's why they opened up passing. There's going to be less physical, injuries and that sort of thing. So to me, also with baseball, you think of the early 1900s and up to 1920, that era. So I just always have liked that era. So since the rules weren't a ton different, and you could forward pass, that's sort of why. And then it helped that I found a rule book that I could go through. But touchdowns were 6 points, and they had extra points at the time. I had a safety. They did kickoffs. It was very similar to what we see today in some ways, and in other ways not. But really and then the way we play it is a lot like today. But what I wanted, my goal from the start was I wanted people to come out and watch it and feel like they're watching a 1920s football game. And I wanted the players to actually be living the strategy. I didn't want them just out there playing modern day flag football. So the critical thing was, all right, you got to get the jerseys and look good. You got to get some helmets. Everyone wears black shoes. We got striped socks. That's part of it. And then I don't know if I think I might have showed here's the football we use. And it's got the rounded ends and everything on it. So this right here is the key to the whole thing, because it's you try and throw this thing, most guys aren't going to throw it over 20 yards. So and if you do, you're going to throw it up in the air a little bit, and you're going to have some problems catching it. So the football was key, because we wanted to make it so they're not there passing the ball all over, and and it's going to look a little bit more like a 1920s game.
Yeah, that's amazing. And like, so I was while you were talking, I was trying to do some research, and like like looking into like Pop Warner, who was coaching in the 20s, and like is there a coach on this team, or is it essentially like vintage baseball where the coach also plays type situation?
I mean, that's how it was back then. George Hallis ran the Bears, and he was, an end on the line, and that was it. So, when I researched the independents, they basically had a manager who would schedule, and he did everything. He'd schedule games and work out guarantees. He'd hire the players. He'd, pay to rent the field. He'd paid somebody to, set up the field and do all this stuff. So each team kind of had a guy who would be a manager, and sometimes he was a player like Hallis, but they didn't really have a coach. Back then they were looking for former college players to sort of head up the thing, because a lot of the guys that maybe played high school, some played college, but that's what I say is cool about back then is there's tons of neighborhood teams, kind of like baseball back then. Even in the Quad Cities, where this Rock Island team came from, there was probably 10 or 15 different football teams, and all the baseball players, after the season was over, it'd be October, then football would start. They didn't overlap really the season, so they could play both. So some of the teams formed from, they would have the same name as the baseball team, but now they're the football team. But yeah, a lot of amazing history there, and that's why I just got so deep into it, and here I am.
You notice any of the football clubs playing in a modern way, like pulling guards and the kind of passing plays that happen nowadays? Is there any emphasis on please keep it a little more historic?
So we ask about the rules, so I'll go through the basic rules. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of difference in the rules itself of the game. The very cool rule that I love the most, back then, if you how now if you're a running back and you're running towards the end zone and you fumble the ball into the end zone or out, that's a touchback. Well, back then, if you threw the ball into the end zone, if it landed in the end zone or went out the side or back or got tipped, and if it just went over the plane and went out, it was a touchback. So that rule has bitten a lot of teams. They're trying to throw it up, and it hits, gets tipped at the 5 and goes in the end zone. It's a touchback, going the other way. So that's really the biggest rule, and it's a really cool rule. We really, you can't just chuck it up into the end zone. So that sort of limits that sort of thing as well. If you want, I'll go through basically our formations and how. So what I do at the start is, the way it works is we're going to have a practice the morning of the game, let's say about 3 hours before the game. I'll invite everyone out. I'll do an introduction, and then I'll basically go through, like I said, modern day safety rules. Like I started this partially, I got the idea. I played 8-on-8 flag football in Chicago. It was very competitive. We had linemen, and it was full contact blocking. So it was tough. It was people pulling, and yes, end runs with people getting run over. And this was up in Chicago. So some big guys, some former college players. So that's when I really fell in love with this style of flag football, because it was very real, but it was also flag football. So it wasn't as dangerous. So I took that idea and I said, what are we going to do here to play this game? And basically, due to the age, sort of stuff, and just to make it a little smaller, I basically shrunk everything by 20%. So the field we do 80-yard field with a 10-yard end zone. So that shrunk, and then it's narrowed a little bit by about the same, 20%. And then we do 9 against 9. If we do 11 against 11, that's 5 linemen. It's kind of too many people. So we have 3 interior linemen and 2 ends, which line up. The linemen are about arm's length apart, and the ends are out about another half step or so, and they're pass eligible. And then we line up, the quarterback is in shotgun, and I've got 3 backs behind me, a fullback, a left halfback, and a right halfback. So basically in the rules, I say this is how you have to line up every time. And I emphasize, all the safety stuff, no hitting above the shoulders, no going below the waist. We go through all that stuff first, and then we line them up. We say, all right, everyone line up. Here's how your line is. Here's how the defense is going to line up, straight across. So the guy across from you is who you're blocking. No pulling, none of that. You're trying to beat the guy across from you. So that's how I explain it. And we might sort of walk through some practice plays to get them used to it. And then after that, we'll start huddling up and let the teams figure out who's going to maybe be the quarterback, if it's, some newer guys. And they sort of, they're learning on the fly here. So we're running through some plays, and like like I said, so that's how I go through it pretty much every year. And then we go over kicking formations. Same thing. We got when you kick off, you got 9 across, and the defenders have 5, 3, and 1, and you pretty much line up 5, 3, and 1, or 5, 1, and 3 if you're the quarterback. But it's pretty much that formation on defense. You got 5 linemen, 3 linebackers, and only one safety that can drop back more than 20 yards or so before the play starts. So everyone just has that formation. You get tricky. You call, you say, I'm going to fake the handoff to you. We're going to roll out, or I'm going to pitch it to you late. You lead block around the end, and it's out there. That's why I say it's not tackle. And some people on Facebook, it's just tackle. Well, you come out and play if you want. You're going to get run over a lot of times, and it's physical. And sometimes people don't come back because it is pretty physical. But I want it to look like a game. I want you to have all the strategies from the 20s and play some real football. So,
wow.
So every single offensive play, you start out in the same set.
Yeah, the first year I actually made a rule, because back then they used to do a shift. So I tried to incorporate a shift where you could say ready. Here's how I usually call it: ready, set, and then hut. Or I'll call like blue 16 or whatever. Ready, set, hut. But it was sort of set up that on the ready, you had the 3 guys. They could shift over into like a box. Like if you got the 3 here, they could shift to a box, and then you could run a counter off of that or whatever. But it's a little confusing, so I've kind of dropped that. It's still in the rules, and one of the teams has done it every once in a while, but it kind of screws up everybody. Just lining up the same formation keeps it simple, and you can call all sorts of laterals and options and things out of that. You got 3 backs behind you. You can halfback pass, or little screens and stuff like that. So yeah, so everyone's in the pretty much the same formation, kind of to keep it simple.
Are you guys have you constructed goalposts?
Yeah, that was one of the challenges. And, one of the challenges probably for this whole game in general is like, all right, so I came up with the rules, and there's been several people that have asked me about, they want to set up this for themselves or whatever. I'd say that the hardest part is, you could get jerseys made like I have, or you could even use a long sleeve shirt and make your own shirts, I guess, if you want to go to a lesser thing. But there's a lot of startup costs and stuff. And then finding like a historical thing, which is good for vintage baseball. We play on a lot of historical type lands and stuff, but you got to find maybe the local historical society and have them sort of buy into it. And because I'm not going to, let's say I just live in a random city, I'm not going to go put out all this money and go find all these people by myself, because it's kind of hard. Like I said, I had some help at the start. So we do it in Rock Island, and they've seen how it works, and the Rock Island Parks is happy to have the same guy. He actually plays, he sets up the field for us. So he chalks the field and does everything to my specifications. And then he actually gets some 2x2 boards and puts some brackets on there and digs the holes and puts them in the ground, of course, at the front of the goal line. So that makes for some interesting situations as well. So
how much give? They're in the front of the end zone. How much give there in those goalposts?
Like I said, they're just like 2x2s. So yeah, luckily we haven't had anyone smash into one and break them. So they've got some give, and football's hit them a few times and they haven't snapped. So that's what we use. But yeah, they're a little bit forgiving. So
wow.
Yeah.
Who's governing this? Is this self-governed, or do you have like refs?
Well, in the rules, I ideally have 4 refs. I have one behind the offensive line, one behind the defensive line by the linebackers, and then a side ref on each side. So 4 refs, and one of them will keep time. The other strategy, it's kind of hard thing to do was, and it goes to the flag football. A lot of flag football, you do 20 yards for first down. So since our field is 80 yards, we have a first down at the 20, 40, which is midfield, and then the other 20. So you still get just 4 plays, but that's the other thing. It's a little harder to get a first down. And back then they did a lot of punting and running. So in our game, there's a lot of punting and running, and we don't have a chain gang. So I actually made my own down marker with the 1st through 4th down. And we usually find somebody to come out. They might dress up in some like the officials will dress in a little cap, white button shirt, and brown pants and black shoes. So they've all bought into it. They all love it and want to come out there every year. So we got somebody to hold the down marker, and that they'll sort of stay there till the play is over, so we know where the line of scrimmage was. So a lot of obstacles and things I had to come up with to make this work. That's why it makes it a little harder than, starting up a vintage baseball club where you got opponents you can play and people already got uniforms and that sort of thing.
What has the response been from the vintage baseball community? Do you have a lot of dual players in the league
Well,
there?
I live in Tennessee, so no, because my game is up in Rock Island. But a couple years ago, Jeff Wells, who I believe who played down here in Tennessee, he was on my vintage baseball team, and a lot of the guys had heard about it and thought it would be kind of cool. And he does an event every year. He's retired now, so he doesn't anymore. But when he was working at the Alvin C. York State Park out in East Tennessee. So he had said to me a couple times, "Hey, I'd like to, we have the stuff going on with the World War I. They have rifles and machinery and stuff they show." He's like, "I'd like to, a lot of players went away at World War I and went to camps and played football. And there's books written about some of these famous teams and stuff." So he'd like, "I'd like to maybe on the Sunday when this is wrapping up, have a bunch of the volunteers and the military people play a game." So we did get a bunch of our vintage baseball players to come out there to help field teams. We had the Army against the U.S. Marine Corps, and I believe it was 16, 17, and 18. And I'll be honest, they were all excited the first year, and a lot of them didn't want to play the second year. So this isn't vintage baseball. This is a little bit rough out here, and a lot of them now still. Are you still doing it? Yeah. Oh man, I wouldn't do that again. So
wow.
I'm not really selling it here too good. But I'll say this: I guess I'm probably pretty selfish because I pretty much did this all for myself. So I want to play. I want to see the independents play, and I want to play a game. So all these people come out and dress up. We play a football game, and I love it. So
Well, yeah, the guy who's organizing has to love it, or
yeah.
it's going to train wreck. Actually, we were I was doing a vintage baseball festival in Frankenmuth, Michigan. And we did it in 2018, 2019. Then in 2020, we were actually going to do a vintage football match exhibition. And so I had started the process of learning the rules, and I was going to get, coaches for each team, and they were in charge of their team because I have a lot going on with the baseball and everything. And I had started the process, but COVID took it away from us. So we didn't really get too far with the football. And I never revisited it.
Was that just random, or had you actually seen a little bit of what we had done?
Okay, so we have a gentleman in vintage football by the name of Paul Hunkley, and he brought it up to me that it exists, and I believe he has a son or a son-in-law that is a part of it. What you guys do. He lives down there like that.
Yeah, I looked when I started. I couldn't find any. I think there was like somewhere out east, somebody had put on some like 1800s uniforms and kind of ran around, didn't really play a game. But I did a little research and I couldn't find anyone who had done like a 1920s. So, because I said I was starting from square one. So, but yeah, I'm sure people had the idea before. It's just kind of hard to get it organized.
No, I had absolutely saw what you've done, and we're just going off of that. This was not an original idea in my head. So and then I had these big grandiose plans about how I'm going to get at least a team full of people who are willing to do this over and over, because like you said, it's a little rougher than baseball, and then we'd be able to travel down there once a year, I thought. And but then I never revisited it, and it's been off of my head. But I tell you what, it is on my radar. So people who are listening to this, that is on my list of things I would.
Let's be honest. There's a bunch of people listening to this, and they're going to reach out immediately because they're I don't want to say crazy. That seems like a hard word to throw around, but they are masochistic, and they would love to get out there and throw some people around and play some football. I know that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that bad. I kind of talked to it. it's like I said, you got the guy across from you, you're doing a lot of running. So it is probably a average age is younger than some vintage baseball teams in this area. I know there's real competitive vintage baseball with some younger guys, but
Yeah.
so it's and a lot of our players, it's kind of weird. We do have a lot of older guys that are out there because they, you know, they love the history, and then we have a bunch of like former semi-pro players and high school players and some college kickers out there too that are, you know, pretty physical. So it's, but if you play like the games in Tennessee, they were physical. I think they just got, you know, a little bit wore out. It was a lot more than the vintage baseball here. So they were like just tired and sore for a week afterwards. And they're like, I don't know if I want to do that. It wasn't like they were all like had broken legs, and it's just it's a lot. So I do want to say, since
Well,
you're talking about that, we have had, let's say I wrote it down. We have had 8 games in 4 locations. We had a NFL draft. There was a draft when they did the 100 years. They came to Rock Island, and we put on like a kind of a semi game there. We had 8 games at 4 different locations, and then we have had 7 games at Douglas Park. So, so 16 games in total, and we've had the Rock Island team, the Moline team. We've come up with a St. Paul team is who the Rock Island team played 100 years ago. And then in Pine Village, Indiana, there was a team called the Pine Village Villagers. They saw what I was doing, and it was the lady who was the head of the historical society there, and said, yeah, we have this little town event every year, and this would be kind of cool. And she went like all in over the top. I basically say like, all right, I'll organize the football, and you know, we'll get some players together, kind of you get some locals. But she put on a town thing where they actually had a parade. The high school kids came out, the football team, and they shut down the town. We're playing across from cornfields and everything, and it's just a huge community event. Probably like 500 people showed up to the game
Wow.
itself, and like I said, they shut down the whole town of a couple hundred people just for this game. But it's cool because back then their football team, that's what they were known for in this little 200-person population town. So 100 years later, you know, the Pine Village Villagers played again. So we've had that, and like I said, the military game at Alvin C. York, and played a Rock Island game at another venue. Same thing. She's raising money for her house, it's like a 1920s mansion they're refurbishing. So they, you know, invite people out and get all their donors out there to watch the football game. So like I said, I'll put on the game for you, and you make what you want of it, is kind of how it's worked so far, really, with me being involved. And I will say I'll say there's one other game that's happened that I know of, and I helped the guy. His name is Brad Anderson, and he's actually out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. He every year after the Thanksgiving on that Friday, he's got a bunch of guys actually in their 30s that would go out and play like a football game, because that's tradition. And he had seen what we were doing, and for a couple years, right around COVID when that started, that kind of killed him. But as far as you know, getting that moving. But finally last year they did a little bit, and then this year they actually played 100% by the rules that I had given him, and they had their jerseys made and everything. So just so you know, there is a game that happens every year in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Actually, I believe I talked to Brad Anderson, and he is the gentleman who gave me your name.
Okay. Yep.
So actually, I think that's how that went.
So yeah, that's what I say. The way to do it is you got to find somebody who's really into it, maybe a local field to play at, and then you go from there. I can help whoever with whatever. I would really like to get up there and attend his event and do it up the way I do it. You know, help either referee or play, or just, you know, go through the rules with everyone and be a part of it. But it's usually right after Thanksgiving, so a little hard to get up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the football stuff is amazing. The fact that you have limited amount of games really makes it special. You don't have any commitment issues then, because they're not going to get to play this a whole lot. They know they're going to have a lot of recovery time, for one thing. So
Yeah.
so I would love to see one of these games one of these times. So definitely keep me informed of future matches. I'm always willing to travel for a good time. Don't threaten me.
Yes. That's what I've said, that like the Pine Village or other places are like, you could promote this, and, you know, Rock Island's not too far from the baseball Field of Dreams. I'm like, you guys should be promoting this. It's football's Field of Dreams, but I say it's kind of a real place. The Bears, the Cardinals, the Packers, a bunch of Hall of Famers, a bunch of college, former players played in this exact field. So you guys, make what you can of it, and get some crowds out to support your cause, which is they have a Friends of Douglas Park too, which has fixed up that park. They actually have a whole new grass field now since we started, and not really relating to us, but a little bit. The park was actually maybe gonna be sold off, but I think the community kind of rallied behind the park. Like I said, maybe a little bit due to us, but also because it's been there forever. And so I don't really have a personal fundraising cause for this, but I just sort of like helping out these societies and park things that are trying to raise money and just get people out there to be aware of their history and stuff.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your enthusiasm, for bringing people this vintage football, and you're involved with vintage baseball. You are a busy man. I found that out a year ago. It's still true to this day. You got the two little ones. It sounds like everything is coming up Herrera. Would you say that's true?
Guess what'd you call me earlier? The vintage overlord.
No, I said it was a vintage overload.
Oh, overload.
I thought it was a typo when you sent it back to me. But
okay.
You definitely are a vintage overload.
Yeah.
I even had in my head one day to turn my vintage baseball festival into a vintage sports festival, to where we'd have a vintage football match and a vintage basketball match and vintage golf going on at the golf course. And I wanted to take everything back 100 years for a weekend. And that was actually my big grandiose plan. There's no way I could pull that off, but boy, I even had a professional wrestling 1920s professional wrestling event being put into the works too. Dare
to dream.
Somebody, it's out there for somebody if they want to take up vintage basketball. I've seen some of the old, it's like a leather ball with some laces, and I don't even know if they dribble. I think they just passed the ball. It was something for them to do after the football season got over, and the scores would be like 15-10 or something. So nobody's even touched that. So there you go.
They don't dribble now.
True. So nothing's changed.
Simon, before we get you out of here, Rudy, did you have a question before
just
we do
real quick? You mentioned that they're like you've had someone come out and film the games. Someone listening right now, say they want to, is there a way for them to like see a clip of a game or watch a game? Is there someplace they can go?
Yep. If you go to YouTube and then just search Vintage American Football, I've uploaded all three of their games, including this year's, the most recent one that happened in September. So they have a broadcast team out there. They do I gave them all sorts of history. So they have all these graphics that they made with a lot of these stats, and they'll cover the Rock Island history a little bit. And they have a pretty cool little intro, and then they show the whole game, which so that helps too with the player recruiting, because they get to see themselves on TV. They'll actually talk to them and say, how many years you played and why do you come out here every year? So they get a little time on the camera.
That's fantastic.
One more quick story. The cool thing, the first year we played, there was a guy, Mike Ingholm, on our team, and his mother is Sandy Ingholm. And the first time I met her, she told me her dad played on the Rock Island team. And I said, your dad? Like, how is this possible? She's probably like 65 years old or so. And but yeah, she was born way late in his life, in his 70s, I guess. But so her son came out. This is a cool story about the whole thing. Is her son came out and played on the field that first year. And when I saw her on the sideline, she gave me a hug and was crying because she said, oh, he looks just like my dad out there playing. And so that's kind of just why I do it that. And a lot of the people come out and they do. That's what I wanted it to look real. They come out and say, "Where'd you get these guys? Are they like traveling expos?" Like I said, "No, we're just real guys." They thought the first year was like a scripted, actors out there. And I said, "No, we're playing a real football game out there. Like I need to get back in." They're trying to, talk to me. They want to interview on the, the local news. I said, "No, this is a real game." Like, so that's how good it's gone. And, if anyone wants to get involved, like I said, vintageamericanfootball@gmail.com. You can reach out to me. And I'd say the best way, if you really want to get involved, is like just come play in our game. We do have openings every year as people drop out. So anyone wants to travel to Rock Island, we're going to have a game for sure next year. And that could be how you sort of check it out.
Nice. Football, manly men's sport where you're still knocking up chicks at 70. I think that's what I got out of that story.
Yep.
Simon, we're going to get you out of here so you can get back to fathering and husbanding. But before we do a little thing at the end of the episodes called giving you the old pepper. So these are just quick questions with quick answers. Here we go. Can you name one of the best Christmas gifts you've ever gotten?
Well, probably this is gonna sound weird, but yeah, just when I was a kid, loved music and stuff. So my parents got me one of those old schools 80s radio with the cassette thing, and I would just sit there and loved it because I could actually start recording, all these songs off the radio. So that was just one of the best things ever when I was about 10 years old.
What dish at Thanksgiving do you feel like you overdid it on?
It's kind of weird. I love stuffing. It's the Stouffer's house stuffing. I don't know why. My wife's like, I could make my own stuffing. I said, no, just get the Stouffer's house stuffing. That's the one thing I'm looking forward to. I don't care about the turkey. I just want that stuffing with some gravy. So
what is the family that you have created with your wife? What is your family gift tradition?
For like Christmas?
Yes.
Okay. Really just the kids and even our grandparents. So, they don't get anything for us to just get stuff for the kids and me and my wife will exchange stuff, but that's pretty much just about the kids these days.
What was your first car?
Oh boy. Was that 1987? Was it a Stanza, like a Nissan Stanza, something like that? Just the thing got like 55 miles a gallon though, so it was a 4-cylinder or 2-cylinder something. But yeah, little small, not safe car.
When it comes to Christmas trees, do you prefer real or fake?
Definitely real, because love the pie and smell and all that. So, and it's a lot easier you just put it up. You don't have to. Some of these, my wife's parents gave us a Christmas tree, 10 layers of all those things. You got to fluff out everything. It took me 3 hours to build that thing. So when I get my way, we just go get a real tree and it's up.
Name a Christmas song that drives you crazy.
Probably lately Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer, because my 6-year-old just plays it nonstop on the Alexa. So
that's true torture. Besides vintage sports, do you collect anything?
No, not really. No, just vintage sports items, I suppose. Like I said, the old book and all that. So nothing really. No.
Okay. What is your favorite cheese?
That's a random one. Probably the sharp cheddar cheese. We'll get that and cut that up to kids. Huh?
That's not random, Simon. Everybody loves cheese.
Yeah. Well, I can't. That's about all I eat. It's just basic cheese. So yeah, I don't have any crazy ones.
What vintage event have you heard about but never attended that you would like to?
Well, the Gettysburg baseball one. That would be awesome. I'm thinking some of our team, or our travel team, the league kind of has a travel team that they go up there. I believe they've been there. So I think, after listening to some of your guests talk about it, that would be pretty amazing to go up there and play in that.
What was the first concert you ever went to?
REO Speedwagon.
Oh,
in a small place that had, standing room only. They were up on the stage. It was pretty intimate, so pretty cool.
if you woke up tomorrow and you learned that all of the animals can now talk, what's the first animal that you want to go talk to?
Probably probably like a hawk or something like that that can, fly around. Like to hear what they see. That'd be pretty cool to be up there with them.
And lastly, as a New York Jets fan, what is your personal Mount Rushmore of favorite New York Jets players?
Well, I got to start with Mark Gastineau, of course. I actually went to my first Jets game in a few years. I hadn't been to one, and I went to the Vikings Jets a couple weeks ago, and they had a New York Sack Exchange signed helmet by the 4 linemen. So didn't bid on it, but I took a great picture of it. So Mark Gastineau, Joe Klecko, love those two. My favorite player, because I loved receiver, was Wesley Walker. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He had limited eyesight. I think he was legally blind in one eye. I looked up his stats not too long ago. His receiving stats are up there with some of the best today, and he's not in the Hall of Fame. Same timer, Freeman McNeil, love that guy. And of course, I played a lot of Madden growing up, so I really loved Dennis Byrd, who got paralyzed on the Jets. He was an amazing player, and I would sit there and play Madden against my buddies and just be Dennis Byrd the whole game, just to shut him down. So I'd say those 5.
But you're only allowed 4, so we're going to take off Joe Klecko.
Okay.
Joe Klecko in Smokey and the Bandit.
Oh yeah.
Oddly enough. That's a good movie. Simon, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate you. What a great episode. Rudy, talk to Simon.
No, yeah, I mean, you are really doing above and beyond a passion project, and I literally just subscribed to the YouTube page. I can't wait to watch. I mean,
yeah, check that out.
I encourage everybody listening to subscribe to the YouTube page, check out these videos, and I definitely know there's a contingent of people here in the Midwest that are going to be extremely interested in this. So thank you so much for the pun intended, picking up the ball and running with it. And I wish you all the best in the upcoming seasons.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on. One more little thing, if you guys could maybe put a link to the Etsy page I have. I have a vintage sports company. I've changed the name from Vintage American Football because I'm doing some vintage baseballs as well. But that any sales there sort of helps me keep this going. So Etsy Vintage Sports Company. I got some footballs. I got some Rock Island t-shirts and stuff. But like I said, it helps me keep it going. My wife was, not too thrilled the first year or two, and all this money was coming out of our personal account and not collecting anything. So this is, a little bit of what it's turned into, just to keep the dream alive.
Oh, that
That's
sounds very familiar to me. My wife says, "Oh, how much money is this podcast making?" So yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, you guys are dedicated. I'm huge into fantasy football, and I kind of think, hey, man, I'd really like to start something like that, but it's just so much research and the time you put into it. So thank you very much for
Rudy puts in practically no time.
Yeah, I do nothing.
Just hits record and stop and a little editing. So
he doesn't even show up all the time. What an easy gig. All right, Simon, stay in the line for us so we can say goodbye to you like gentlemen would. And Rudy, get us out of here.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the Barrel Roller, I'm the Swamp Fox, and we want to tell you to keep it station to station, and we'll see you out in the field.